I think it's important to know what the facts are. And so I'm going to tell you what I think is some pretty horrible stuff, and then let the panel tell you the brighter side. And the brighter side is almost doesn't matter what your issues are, you can move past being in prison, become an amazing parent, go to school, become an electrical engineer, be anything you want to be. But the bad part, let me go back up here, it has to do with funding, first of all. We've never been able to fund our work to the point that we could accept more than 15% of applicants. So 85% of the people that apply to this program up till a year ago are turned down, whether they're deserving of being accepted or not. In the last year, I wanted that to get better, but then Doris Buffett, who was Warren's sister, she devolved into being cognitively impaired, and her foundation, Sunshine Lady Foundation, has ceased funding. And so instead of accepting more than 15%, we've dropped back to accepting less than 11%. And in regard to funding, I'm going to tell you a little anecdote. Maybe I could get somebody, Keith, Leslie, or somebody could help hand these out for me, please. There's a whole cadre of funders in this country that won't fund former prisoners. And it's just because it's a hated, feared population, and I think that former prisoners are hated and feared because we don't know who they are. You know, we learn about who they are supposedly from Frank Blethen's Seattle Times and other mainstream media, and it gives false impressions. So my pet peeve, if you get an email from me, this is usually the byline on it, because everybody wants to fund the politically safe, the homeless, who obviously need funding, veterans, politically safe, mentally ill, somewhat politically safe, children, super politically safe, but adult former prisoners, not politically safe. So this handout that Leslie just gave everybody kind of goes to this issue, which is if you really care about kids, you better take care of their parents. It was part of a report to the World Health Organization by John Bowlby back in 1950. And this is like my pet peeve with the Gates Foundation, Seattle Foundation, United Way, all of everybody's favorites, because they just won't take care of the parents. And the deal is, if you don't take care of the parents and you have kids in a house where somebody's addicted or mentally ill or both, the kids are going to go down the tubes. You can spend $10 billion on the kids. If you don't take care of the parents, the whole family's going down the tubes. So this little anecdote is a couple, back in, I guess, 2010, Mitty Beale, who's Doris Buffett's executive director, sent us an email, and she was interested in funding our work. And she asked a whole bunch of questions, and we shipped off this crazy big thick package to Philadelphia. And a month later, we got an email that basically said, "You're not financially stable, are you?" And I'm like, is everybody okay with profanity, just minor profanity? So I'm like, in our office, it was like, no shit, Charlie Brown, tell us something we don't know. And, but I wanted to respond to her positively and give her an upbeat answer, but one that was honest. So I thought about it for about a month. It took me a month to write an answer that began with a paragraph in this email. And after I wrote this paragraph, which deals with political cowardice, legislative cowardice is what I call it, I cut and pasted the paragraph before I sent it to Sunshine Lady Foundation. I cut and pasted it, and I sent it to Eldon Vale, who was the Secretary of the Department of Corrections at the time. and was a friend then and is a friend now. And I said, is this a fair statement? Is it fair to say that post-secondary education, which reduces recidivism more than anything known to man, isn't being funded by the state of Washington due to legislative cowardice? Which, you know, that goes back to Richard Nixon's tough on crime, soft on crime, and so on. And I thought Eldon would answer me from his personal email or call me on his personal cell phone. I never dreamed he wouldn't answer at all, and 3 days went by, and I'm starting to think he's not going to answer. And then this email came in, and he said, yeah, that's a fair statement. So you had a guy who's sitting on the governor's cabinet saying and Secretary of the Department of Corrections saying at the time on his DOC email saying it's a fair statement to say that legislative cowardice is the reason that post-secondary education isn't funded for former prisoners. So, and that is the issue that actually could cause us to go under. I mean, that's the issue we'll live and die on. Despite this, nobody, so right now Washington has a readmission rate that's gone as high as 51%. They have a recidivism rate of 32.2%. So more than half the people that come out of Washington's prisons go back with one or more new felony convictions when we're not involved. But when we are involved, only 8% go back. In 11 years, we've had 14 people recidivate. Our success rate's 91.6%, and it doesn't matter. When it comes to funders, it doesn't matter. When it comes to students like Leslie or Keith or Gina or Jenny, it matters because their lives are turned around as they'll discuss with you. But for funders, it just doesn't matter. If we were 100% successful, we still couldn't get adequate funding. Bob Cooper, our lobbyist, insists we're going to get it from the legislature this year. I sort of hope that doesn't happen because I'll have a heart attack and I'll be in ICU in some cardiac arrest hospital. So I want to give you some quick numbers and then have the panel come up and spend as much time as we can with Q&A. So about 2 months, in fact, Ellis, the lady Caroline Halter, who's writing this recidivism article for Crosscut, asked the senior research person at DOC for a snapshot of Washington's prison population on one given day. And it happened to be July 31st. And so this is cut and pasted right out of an email. And it's extraordinary. It's like on that day, 2,126 of the prisoners had been back to prison 3 times. 426, 6 times. 717 people on that day had been returned to prison with new felony convictions 5 times. I think it's like 42 or 45% of the prison population on that day had been in prison previously. So what's happening is people are coming out and their needs aren't met. They're coming out into homelessness, they're coming out sometimes facing addiction, they're coming out seriously mentally ill, and their needs aren't met, and they recidivate. And it's gotten to an insane level. This, I was hoping that Devin Shrum from the Department of Corrections would be here today. She had told me that she was going to be here because she heads up the reentry division of the Department of Corrections, and I think that they're not doing as well with how they spend their money as they could. And what I particularly don't like is 77% of recidivists are in this high violent, high non-violent category. Only 14% of recidivists are low and moderate. So DOC, and you can get the percentage I gave you over here. DOC is spending a lot of money on high violent, high non-violent, but the other part of that is people who are seriously mentally ill, and then the low moderate. And they're spending too much money on low moderate, and those people don't recidivate. So it's like we're like spending money on low, moderate risk people when high risk people are recidivating like crazy, more than 3/4 of the time. And I just think that money shouldn't be spent there, and especially if the people who aren't being helped suffer serious mental illness. So this chart, for those of you who were ever in the military, you'll know the PULS code, P-U-H-L-E-S. That's where the military is deciding what they're going to do with your body if you come into service. DOC adopted that, and the S stands for psychiatric. So if you look at this, basically you end up knowing that 34% of Washington's prisoners suffer serious mental illness. Schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar, and borderline personality disorder. Those are the ones that, when you have an S code of 2, 3, 4, or 5, that's what you're talking about. That's 34% of Washington's prisoners. When you take the high violent and the seriously mentally ill, or people who suffer both, which is comorbidity, and combine them, that's where resources should go. And that's where we put our resources, and that's why we're 91.6% successful. DOC is not. They spend too much money on low and moderate, and that's why we have this insane population. This state doesn't have money to spend on people who don't need it spent on them, and especially when the group that's not benefiting at a level that they should is dying. They're recidivating. They basically come out, they relapse, recidivate, and die, or come back it's like relapse and die, or relapse and recidivate. Very few are successful. So, and these are all DOC reports, by the way. This is readmission. So it's a way of measuring returns to prison that's not time barred. So recidivism is a 3-year time bar. If you go back within 3 years with a new charge, a felony charge, then that's recidivism. If you go back at any time in your life, that's readmission. And you can see, the readmission rate in September 2011 was 43%, I think 43.2%. And it has skyrocketed since then to the point that it went to 53%, somewhere up here, right here. And then it consistently was at 51%. More than half of the people coming out go back. That's insane. And so we've been able to counter that. And just as of March 8th, we're made aware from DOC reports that we're 91.6% successful. So it's a pretty horrible mess right now in Washington. It's not the DOC's fault. For those of you who walked in here believing a lot like I did when I started this program in 2005, that the prison system that they're the bad guys. They're not the bad guys. There are some bad guys who work for DOC, just like probably there are that work for FedEx or anybody else, but the bad guys are the legislators, the people who won't fund us, won't fund programs that work, won't fund programs that save lives. So what I want to do now is ask people who have gone through the hell of reentry to come up. And are you scared, Keith? Are you scared? Leslie, Gina, Jenny, we need another chair. So what I'm going to ask them, I've asked them to do is just talk like 3 to 4 minutes each of them, tell their story. Keith, I'm going to ask him to tell somebody else's story. So Shelley Clear was supposed to be here this morning. She's the lower picture here on the brochure, and she couldn't get off work. I got an email from her yesterday. It says, "I'm so sorry, Ari, especially for the late notice. I can't make it tomorrow. I missed work yesterday for Fallon's first day of school," that's her daughter, "and I have to miss 2 days next week for court. And I just can't afford to do that." So she's at work not far from here as a welder at the shipyard. And she sent a written statement in that I'm going to get Keith to, we could actually hand this out, and then maybe Keith can read it. But So her story is by email, and everybody else's stories in person. So I'll hand those out, and you could even go first. You could even talk first. Don't be scared. So Leslie Gordon, Keith Whiteman, Jenny Lord. Jenny's daughter's the one over here that she stole my cell phone. She's headed for prison with my stolen cell phone. And then Gina McConnell-Otten.
All right, my name's Keith Whiteman. I'm a chronic recidivist. They call me a career recidivist. I'm 40 years old. I started my prison visits at about 18, and I've been back. I've been to prison a total of 6 times for about a total of 15 years. I'm really frustrated that the people that control things out here will only be motivated by money. It's very frustrating when you see the people that come out of prison fail. And it's like we all know that people are only going to change when they're ready to change. And sometimes when they come out of prison, there's only a small window before they're snatched back up by the streets and that hopelessness, right? So what post-prison education program did for me is I was fortunate to release at a moment when funding was adequate, and I was able to get into housing and into school and transition seamlessly into college and work on my sobriety and work on my relationship with my family and not have to stress out about that bottom rung on Maslow's hierarchy, right? So it's really frustrating. As Ari said, I work at post-prison, and it's heartbreaking. It really is, when you see so many people full of so much potential, and there's just no money to help. There's nothing. I mean, when you're so limited by money, by finances, and it's crushing. I could sit up here. I only have a limited amount of time because there's some other people that their stories are amazing too. I'm kind of, to be honest with you guys, kind of burnt out, and this is hard. This is really hard for me to do this, and it's taken a lot out of me, and but I just need each one of you guys to tell somebody that you know, and tell them to tell somebody that they know that there's people dying out here, and nobody's helping. So, thanks.
Whoa, I'm sorry. God, it has me tearing up, because actually we were talking before everything started, but what I want Keith to know, what he's doing is amazing. And even though if nobody who's entered the program has come to him and say what amazing job, what post-prison did for me was not only did they help me get back financially with things I wasn't even looking for or had no idea that they were offering. What helped me so much is Sean, who, as what Keith did for me. When I was going to school, it was a struggle, it was hard. And I'd come to the office just breaking down like, I'm done, I can't, I'm giving up. And he always had a speech for me. And it just encouraged me to keep on pushing and not stop. But how I ended up, I was a city worker, and my daughter has a medical condition called cystinosis, which is a very rare medical condition. And I mean, my God, I gave 150 every day, no matter what I was going through with my child. But it took me away because it took like 9 months just to figure out what was going on with her. And it's she had the fatal one where she could have died. But we were blessed in the doctors that we got to find out. So anyway, survival. I stopped working, and it was just survival to make it. It was crazy because the insurance, every day I turned around, it was like, well, we can't pay for this. It has to be a medical necessity. And it's like, it is. She needs it to survive. But anyhow, so I ended up in prison, where I did 5 years. Key words that Ari spoke about with really for our children and parenting. I was blessed that my mother was able to take care of my children while I was away. But I have 3, one of them who does have a mental situation, and she doesn't even talk to me. But I still have to keep pushing for my other 2, which is Lakesia, who was on that picture with me. And she is my drive. And she goes to Garfield High School. She's a determined little girl. She doesn't let the illness affect her. She doesn't want sympathy for what she's going through, and she fights every day. And that's what keeps me going. And Ari, that keeps me, his program, done amazing things for me. She has to go to Children's Hospital months, maybe 1 month, 3 months. I mean, we live at Children's Hospital, but he got my car fixed, and I wasn't even looking for that. There was a lady who told me about their program, and I'm like, yeah, right. When I came home, halfway house didn't help me with anything, and it just me going through different programs, being turned away, being judged. And when I found them, it was a blessing. It was amazing. It was just like, do they really offer all this? And Sunshine, who he was speaking of, is who donated the money that helped me to get my vehicle fixed and why I could be there for my daughter. So thank you, Ari, and just the program is amazing. And Keith, keep doing what you're doing. It's going to take a lot, but you don't know how many people you're helping. You wouldn't have no clue. And I'm one of them, even though I didn't get to work with you. So thank you.
I'm not standing up. Oh my gosh. I didn't sign up for this. My name is Virginia Lord, and they call me Ginny. Currently in my new position, my supervisor's name is Jennifer, so I've been being called Virginia because some clients get Ginny and Jennifer mixed up, and then they go and tell people, well, Jennifer said this, and it didn't work out that way. So anyhow, so I've been associated with Ari Kohn and the post-prison education program since 2010. I met Ari after my 3rd time of being released from prison. I've been to prison 3 times. I have 17 felony convictions. I'm in my mid-40s, and that is my daughter back there, and I'm currently raising her. She is my 3rd child. I have 2 other children in their 20s, and my son is currently serving an 11-year sentence in Monroe Prison. So yeah, I honestly didn't really know what I was coming here to talk about. I'm probably not gonna make anybody cry. You guys are awesome, thanks. However, you know, for me, when I think about reentry and when I think about what's going on, the biggest problem, in my opinion, has everything to do with who's creating reentry. It's the same people that are doing the incarceration. So in my opinion, they don't understand what the barriers and what the struggles are, so how can they create their programs? And the programs need to start long before somebody gets out. Yes, there's a severe lack of funding. I too was in Keith's position. I worked for post-prison for about 2.5 years, and I answered many phone calls to which we could not provide services that were needed for clients that were calling, that were in crisis and desperation. And knowing what that feels like to get out and feel like, and with 17 felony convictions, I can guarantee you that the barriers that somebody might think that somebody with a felony has in regards to gaining employment or getting housing, things like that, they're very real. However, I am very driven, and I refuse to allow somebody else to tell me what I can't do. So, which I think made me a really, really integral part of post-prison education program and helping people, encouraging them that yes, you can. And I'm a firm believer that yes, I can, and so can you, and it is exactly what we tell ourselves. But that does not take away from the fact that there aren't a lot of resources out there. So I just second everything that Keith was saying about the funding, but I really think that the biggest problem starts in the prison system itself. The funding there is, wonky as well. However, it's a really, really big business, and they sure do pull in a lot of money every year, and I wonder where it goes. So, that's another conversation. For myself, the last time I went to prison, I made a decision the moment that I touched down that I was going to correct the problems that got me there in the first place, and I recognized that I was the problem. And for me, that's what it was about. It was about awareness and responsibility. And so, but it takes a lot sometimes. Not everybody is ingrained with that system that tells you, you know what, this isn't right. What's happening in my life isn't right, and I'm the one that has to do something about it. So that's what I actually do for a living. I am a former employee and student of the post-prison education program. I currently supervise 3 case management programs with Catholic Community Services, and I'm helping people on the other side of that, people 50 and over currently, who are the results of a lot of the things that we're talking about right now. And there are a lack of resources there as well. However, there are far more resources there than there are for the people that are getting out of prison. And the problem is, and what is it, 1 in 6 people? 1 in 7. So 1 in 7 people, if 1 in 7 people are being released from prison, and they're members of our community, and the resources aren't there for them to be able to get gainful employment, right? To be able to obtain housing and things like that, then there's a problem. That means that a lot of our children that are in the schools, their parents have been incarcerated. And so, the bottom line is that we're all the same. There is no difference between you and me, except for maybe I've been caught for something that you might find trivial, in your own life. And I was actually incarcerated for it because maybe I didn't have the money to fight that case. So that's something to think about, I think. Anyways, I'm sure I took up more than my time. Thank you for letting me talk today.
Okay, so my name is, do I even need this thing? Yeah. Man, I got a big mouth. I usually don't need this thing. So my name's Gina McConnell, and I have been a post-prison education student since Virginia Lord and a bunch of people came in to the Washington Correction Center for Women. And sitting in the back of this cafeteria, I was listening to their stories, thinking, right, and then I saw Ginny, somebody that I had seen around while we were incarcerated, but I didn't really know. And when I saw her, she was walking around and she's shaking her arms and she's like, you can do this, and it sparked something inside of me. At the age of 12, I was on my own, living on the streets, living in abandoned buildings, just the streetmonger kid, one of those kids who didn't have family, who didn't have connections, and who didn't believe in commitment to another person. To a drug, yes, because at least then I could be numb. So when I went to prison, I got an 11-year sentence. I saw these guys come in. They did their presentation, kind of like we're doing up here now, and Ginny lit that spark in me. And so, Keith, when you say that you don't think you're helping people, trust me, you're helping people that you work with, that you talk to, that you live next to every damn day. Every day. So I get out of prison and I go to the work release, and my mentor, Dawn Varentes, who's actually here, came to me and she told Ari, okay, this is the deal. You're gonna have to talk to this girl. I walked into the office and I was there the entire 6 months I was at work release. I was there every day wanting to do something different. I was no good at math. I didn't know how to do it, so I had to have people literally tutor me and hand walk me through every portion of filling out my financial aid, to searching for my classes, to passing the compass test, everything, because I had no education. I got my GED in prison, and I got it when it was 5 tests, and they were a lot easier than they are today, okay? So I didn't really have any idea of what I wanted. I knew I just didn't want to sit on another cement slab. That's all I knew. I had no idea what I wanted to be. And so let me tell you what post-prison did for me. Not only did they give me family and a sense of community and what do you call that? Self-worth. They also gave me the family that I'd never, ever had. Never had. And they built me up to where now I am our Cowlitz County Housing Resource Specialist. I work with people coming in and out of incarceration. I work at the work release every Monday. I'm at the county jails every Friday. I'm trying to pull people in to let them know that this doesn't have to be you. You don't have to be willing to die a statistic. You don't have to. Now I want to tell you about a story about a couple of girls I worked with in my county. because Cowlitz County is probably one of the hardest counties to get attention, to get help in. So I was at the work release and I'm doing my spiel, I'm on my soapbox talking to all the people, and there's this one lady in there and she's like, Gina, I really want this. She's about 51 years old, and I said, okay, sweetheart, this is the deal. I'm here every Monday, we'll meet. When you get out, come find me, because this is the deal. I'm not gonna piggyback you, but I will pick you up every time you fall. So she got out, I didn't hear from her. At the meantime, in the shelter I work at, I'm getting phone calls from a young lady saying, please help me, I'm an amputee, I'm being held against my will. Click. I couldn't get any information out of her. She never stayed on the phone long enough. Please help me, they're holding me against my will. Click. About 3 months after the lady from the work release that I was working with gets out, I get a phone call from her because I hand out my business cards, and she says, Gina, you have to help me. My twin sister is being held against her will underneath this trailer here in Kelso. So I call the Kelso police. We go to the trailer. I see this 51-year-old woman, filthy, dirty, no leg on her right side, crawl out from underneath the trailer. And so I look at the Kelso police and I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna have some support here, right? You're gonna go to these people and say, why are you holding this woman under the trailer? So the police go up and they talk to the people in the trailer, and they come back to talk to me as I'm trying to get the sister and her twin who just crawled out from the trailer, trying to get their story, what's going on. And the Kelso police tell me, we're sorry that she chose to stay under the trailer in that box. She didn't want to be in the house. She couldn't make it up the stairs. And I said, okay, well, what about her Social Security checks? They're holding on to her medication and her Social Security checks. Oh no, they're giving her daily doses and allotting her money daily because she's a drug addict. No problems here, ma'am. No problems? Have you seen the trailer that she just crawled out from underneath of? You're gonna go through it? You're gonna look in it? Something? Nothing. The Kelso police drove away and left me with these two women who were desperate for some help. I bring them into our shelter, and the young lady with the amputated leg had a disease in her leg, had an infection, and she didn't want to go for health care because the health care for the homeless in Cowlitz County is deplorable. They're mean to them, they don't treat them fairly, and they act as if they're just there drug seeking. So she refused to go to the hospital. I showed up to work June 27th, and the young lady had passed away, and I got to work when they were still doing CPR on her before the first responders show up. And so as my coworkers are doing CPR on a woman who's obviously gone, half of her face is sunken in, the other half is swollen. They say, Gina, take over CPR. And I'm just looking at her going, she was alive yesterday. She was obnoxious. She was telling me that I was her bright star in the day. She was funny, she was laughing, and here she is, dead in one of our shelter rooms by her sister, who they'd shared the same cot because we don't have a lot of space in the shelter. And so she died in her sister's arms. So when Keith says that we have people dying, not only do we have people dying, but we have daughters, we have brothers, we have mothers, we have sons, we have people dying all over the state of Washington. Now, I'm part of the 91% that is not going back to prison. I refuse to sit on a metal slab, or a concrete slab or a metal dot ever again in my life. What I will not do, though, is sit down and be quiet and let my friend Charlene's life go down in vain. I will not let the people who lost their children to incarceration or their mothers to incarceration go down in vain. I'm gonna stand up and say, yes, I'm part of that 91%, but it can be better. Let's make it 99.9%. Let's make it 100% so that people don't get forgotten and don't get lost. We're worth it. I don't know, not one of us that sat there and said when we were a kid, I can't wait to go to prison when I turn 18. We all had dreams, and we all have hopes and places we wanna be in life. I will continue to work for the post-prison education program until we reach that 100%. I will continue to work in my county to try and bring awareness, but the one thing that we need is more voices. We have a lot of ears, not many voices, and so we need your voice. Please be loud, be obnoxious, be on social media, promote this program, promote that lives matter. It's the human dignity in a life that matters. Thank you.
Before Will goes, I'm just going to tell you this story that came in by email that we handed out. But you know, listening to everybody talk, I've really gotten to the point where I'm just incredibly angry at the state of Washington and especially the legislature over what's happening. And let me repeat it again, I am really angry at the Washington State Legislature. What they're allowing to happen and the way they're prioritizing spending of money is criminal. I think it's criminal that we have criminalized being mentally ill. And that's really what's happened. I mean, if you go back to this slide, right here, and you look at 34% of Washington's prisoners, and that's a minimum because the 0 column is unclassified. So if you got the unclassified who are seriously mentally ill, you classified them, and then you add to that what they call DMIO, dangerously mentally ill, you might be at 40%. And they can't, I'll tell you a story, and then I'll give it to Will, but in 2010, the Department of Corrections, a counselor at Monroe called me up, and she wanted us to help a guy named Jeremy Polston. And she said his diagnosis was schizoaffective disorder. Well, my major at UW was political science. I couldn't even spell schizoaffective disorder, but I went to Mayo Clinic and searched that on their website, and I read the 9 pages, and it's horrific. It's schizophrenia plus bipolar wrapped up in one person's unlucky body. And they knew, and he was Native American, and they knew he was coming out to poverty in Clark County with this illness, and he had no chance if we didn't get involved. Since then, we've focused on people who are seriously mentally ill and have high needs. Jenny and I think, have been to a combined 10 memorial services and funerals in the last 3 or 4 years. And it's people dying of overdoses. The deal is that's just criminal. I don't know what else to say about it. Shelley, and you can read the email, I'm just going to tell you her story, and Keith may kick in. Keith and I were up at a prison that's closed because of budget cuts up outside of Spokane years ago, 2009 maybe, and did a presentation to about 80 women in a chapel. And when he left, he started talking to me about this woman that had been in the chapel that he knew from the streets. And I thought he was talking about Shelley, because almost immediately the next week, Shelley started blowing up our phones, calling from the prison, the women's prisons out at Belfair. And she was hell-bent on becoming a welder. Like Jenny, she had 17 felony convictions. She had been to prison way too many times. She had fled bond, fled federal cases, state cases, lost her children to the state, but she was focused on getting her kids back and getting her life together. So she came out, and we put her, she was at a work release in Tacoma, Progress House, and we put her at Bates Technical College. And I remember the first time I went down to try to do a budget with her, it was like talking Greek to somebody from China. She had no concept of what a budget was, because that had never been part of her life. And I walked away from Bates thinking, there's no way we can't even work with this woman. She can't do a budget. I think she was raised in the woods of Germany by wolves or something, right? And the long and the short of it was that she just worked and worked and worked and worked. And a quarter of a year before she finished the 2-year welding program at Bates, she was offered a job at what was Todd Shipyard. And 30 days after she took that job, as one of 150 welders and the only female. And by the way, she's almost as big as a puddle of spit. I mean, she is really, her husband battered her badly one time, and I went down to spend some time with her and her kids. And when I left her house, she came up, she gave me a hug, and her head was up to here. And I'm like, Shelley, you're short. I mean, she's a teeny tiny person, but she's one of 150 people on a welding crew, the only woman. So Todd sold out. She went to work at Vigor Industries. Jerry, you know who you met Jerry Vandenberg is with the Rotary Club. that's given our students scholarships for quite a few years, and Shelley's received a scholarship twice. Thank you. So anyway, she went to Todd Shipyard, and she worked so hard and so well. At a point, she had all of her kids back, clean and sober. Then her union rep recommended her to Washington State Ferries, which doesn't hire prisoners by policy, and they hired her. Today, she's working here in Seattle as a welder at the shipyard, united with all of her kids, and just as amazing and strong and future envisioning as you can be. And my guess is that if we hadn't been there for her, everything would have blown up very quickly after she released. So it's just, Will's going to take a talk for no more than 3 minutes. You can't do 2. So, William Alton Smith. And then we'll do Q&A until you all run us out of here. You got to stand up there in front of the camera.
Hey, thanks, Ari, for inviting me to come today, because I believe in what post-prison education is doing, and I think reducing recidivism is a matter of public safety. And I'm actually really sad that these chairs aren't filled, because people getting out of prison with no hope and no place to go, it's bad. I mean, people will go back to their old lifestyles, commit crimes, and victimize. And so this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed. And I'll tell you, thank you for letting me sit up here with you guys. I've only been to prison twice, but I think I've been booked into King County Jail about 30 times or more. But, so anyway, my story is, I came from a low-income family, and I was introduced to drugs at a young age. And so, needless to say, 15 years old, I started smoking crack, and I hardly remember anything from that time on, just a series of in and out of jail, sober for 6 months because I was on probation, back in jail, running the streets, on the run. That was my whole life. And then, I woke up around 40 years old. I was just getting out of prison at 40. The last grade I completed was 8th grade. I had 6 points, 6 felony convictions. African American, man, the scorecards read 0. I was like, man, what am I gonna do? And so I was scared to death to go to school, because I just never had any of that in my background. And so when I heard about post-prison education program, a program that helps prisoners, I really went down there just to see if it was real, because I didn't think that nobody cared about former inmates. And then I met Ari and the rest of the staff, and they started talking about reducing recidivism. I go, yeah, that makes sense. And so originally I was going to go to school for something else, but I ended up, going to school for chemical dependency and social work. It says I'm working on a bachelor's degree. I already have that. So, by the grace of God, I already have the bachelor's degree. And to go even one step further, it's been my dream. I just didn't know how I was going to do this, but I believe in reducing recidivism. And housing, transitional housing is my passion. There's just not enough, and if the basic needs aren't met for people, they're not gonna succeed. If you don't have a safe place, it's the Maslow hierarchy of need. If you don't have a place to live, food to eat, a safe place to be, nothing's gonna happen. And so today I've started a program, it's called ARC Housing, Ministries and Treatment Services. And we provide transitional housing to people getting out of prison. And we partner with DOC, and we partner with Post-Prison Education Program. And another thing also is on Friday we'll have our state license. We'll be state certified to provide treatment services. So our counseling and treatment services is also, and we're currently, I wish Devin Shrum was here today, because we really want to work with DOC and catch people right when they get out. Get them in post-prison education is the key to reducing recidivism, housing, meeting those needs, counseling, all the wraparound services that go into making people successful. And when it says that post-prison has helped 1,600 people. I bet you it's more like 16,000 people, because the average person that uses drug affects a minimum of 10 people, you know, what they're using and they're stealing, and their kids, their brothers, their sisters, their mother. You know, this is a very serious issue, and I'm very, very sad that the legislation or whatever they are, they don't take this matter seriously, because it is very serious, and I'm taking it seriously, you know, and I'm going to use my education that I have as a key to open the door and help other people, you know, and provide these treatment services and these housing services, you know, and we're going to work on expanding our program. If you have any questions, you can talk to me afterwards. So thank you, Ari. Thank you, Post Prison.
Do we have like 7 minutes, or can we pass it? Okay, so I'm just going to ask these guys any question you want, and they'll pass the mic around, and then Alex has a mic for you. Gia, you can't ask a question. You want to ask a question to your mom?
First customer. Here.
Wait. What am I supposed to say, Mom?
You're supposed to be asking a question. If it has anything to do with home, don't ask it now.
Can we go to Costco and get hot Cheetos after?
Next question.
So you've raised some very good points with compelling stories. So what do you want someone like us who don't know any of this or didn't know much of this coming into today to do? I heard go out and speak and with your loudest voice and whatever. I can do that, but I like to do something I can see some benefit from directly. What could we do directly to benefit what you're working on?
Thank you.
Write a check.
That's literally the answer, but if you can't write a check, then work with funders, foundations that do only fund politically safe issues and refuse to fund adult former prisoners and their families. And then work with the legislature. I mean, all of us have representatives. So I actually told Devin Shrum in an email at DOC that I was very likely going to put a picture up here on the screen of Mike Padden, who's the chair of the Law and Justice Committee at the Senate, who's blocked post-secondary education for prisoners for years and years, and I was going to have the caption be Public Enemy #1. And in a way, he is. He goes back to his legislative district in Spokane and claims to his constituency that he's fiscally responsible. That's a lie. If KEXP puts this on, it's a lie. The deal is post-secondary education reduces recidivism more than 50%, period. It's a documented fact. There's meta-analysis on top of meta-analysis, and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of research on our work that's known to the DOC and the legislature, and yet there's no funding for it. So don't let the legislature continue to do what they've done in the past, really. I mean, you can write those people, you can see those people, you can see them in your legislative district, and just tell them that what's happened in the past is unacceptable. That literally, really and truly, people are dying. What's happening is criminal.
One of the things I would also encourage everybody in this room to do is go to a prison. Go to a prison, walk through it, get to talk to some of the folks in there. If you have rentals, rent to one of us, hire one of us, put us as one of your interns, give us a chance, talk to us, mentor us. We're just like you. We made mistakes. You probably made mistakes in your own past and just wasn't as either big or got caught or didn't have the same circumstances. But come to a prison. Walk through the walls, the halls of what we've walked through for years. And then put yourself in the position, because you're going to find somebody that your eyes are going to connect with. And you're going to be like, damn, that could have been me. That could have been me. So while you're doing all these other things like writing your legislative and doing everything, if you want to do something seriously active, come down to the office in Seattle and meet with some of us down there. If you have ways where you can have other panels show up to wherever you work or whatever you need so that we can get the word out even more, please do that. Please don't hold back. Whatever it is you think you can do or you want to do, don't just think about it, do it.
You know, that's a great point. And I'm going to tell a couple stories. Prisoners aren't what people in the public believe they are. So if you read about Gina's career with prisons and DOC and what cases she was charged with, you would think, my God, this is a scary person. I don't even want to be in the same room. You'll never see in mainstream media Frank Blethyn. You'll never see in the Seattle Times. You'll never see Blethyn Incorporated print a story about the background. So Gina's mom was a law enforcement officer in Everett, and she abused Gina so bad that age 12, a young 12-year-old girl fled into homelessness. That always leads, or almost always leads, to jails, addiction, and drugs, and then prison. So Keith's dad had him and his brother using serious drugs before 12. When Jenny and I drove away from the last memorial service that we were at together, a woman who overdosed from heroin, Jenny recounted in huge specific detail to me the first time that she used drugs at age 6 in her parents' home, drugs provided by her parents. And I'm just going to again use profanity, and I apologize. If you're using drugs and addicted at 6, 8, 10, 12 years old, you can kiss your ass goodbye. Your future is written, it's guaranteed, and it includes prison or relapsing and dying. So in answer to your question, just get the stories out about who these people are. Literally, if you go into prison with us, you won't meet anybody that you're scared of. And we could be like in Aberdeen with 250 men in a 3-hour meeting about post-secondary education, and then you kind of get mobbed because everybody's desperate, and you end up it's life-changing, and you find out that prisoners and former prisoners are human beings, and they're not what mainstream media portrays them to be. Another question? This is really, I actually have, Gia's got my phone playing games on it, but at the sentencing hearing, when Gina was sentenced maybe 15 years ago, and I had a lawyer pull the transcripts. The judge said to her, you're not worth the space your body takes up. You're not worth the air you breathe. You'll never amount to anything worthwhile ever. Is that pretty close? And I mean, literally said that. Today, she's finished the curriculum at Seattle Central, works for us. Like she said, she's in the work releases, she's in the jails, she's working people, directing people to community colleges, she's clean and sober, she's testifies at the legislature, she hobnobs with Department of Corrections higher ups, and she's respected by everybody. And the judge was a goddamn liar. Sarah?
Who's judge?
What was his name? I'll email you the quote and the judge's name. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, he does. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
It's very touching to really listen to your stories. Sometimes we're torn because I am a victim to a car prowl, just happened 2 days ago. So the young man was caught and now is in jail, and the police sheriff asked if I want to press any charge. And I don't know what will happen after that. And I'm hearing this prison is not really doing anything to help this person. So what would you say?
I would tell you, I would encourage you to go ahead and press charges, because sometimes, a prison is not always bad, because actually prison was actually almost a treatment center for me, and it gave me an opportunity and a platform to get sober. It's just keep going back to prison. Now that's a bad situation. But going to prison is not necessarily bad for some people, because, with the limited resources that are out there, sometimes it's an only option or a first stop for somebody to get some help. And so, and I was going to address what the gentleman said back there. He said, the best way to you just come down and volunteer. Go down to post-prison education, volunteer. Like he said, write a check. There's not enough funding. For students, there's not enough resources, and that's one of the major things. Is that people aren't giving. The state doesn't see the priority in giving. And every little dollar that post prison gets, I can tell you, it goes towards a student, and they literally need a check. And then if you come down and you volunteer, you'll see kind of how to fit in. And I think that's a very important step, is if you come down and you roll up your sleeves and you get involved, you'll kind of see where you need to be, and how you can help. It'll fall into place. So.
And let me know if any of you guys are good with algebra and you want to volunteer, because there's always somebody that needs algebra tutoring. So.
I have another question. I searched and found your website, and on that it says how to help and volunteer and donation. Will those money go directly to help you, or it has to go through other approval? Because I'm thinking you might have little kids, they need to go to school, they need help. That's something that we probably can help.
No, it goes through transfers, bank, and EFTs into our account the next day. That's how donations work. And then if it comes in through the website, it goes into general funds, which is important because we can spend it any way we want. A lot of times foundations will say you can only use our money this way. You can't use it for administrative work, or you can't use it for this, or you can't use it for that. If it comes, like our second largest funder has been Google. I almost wore a Google t-shirt today instead of a suit, and I wish I had. But I mean, Google has been amazing to us because of Googlers for 6 years, and that money comes in unrestricted. So we can spend it any way we want. A lot of people, does that answer your question without me just beating a dead horse to death? Okay. And Dawn, you want to, the question that he asked, how would you answer that? I was told that if I asked her to talk, she would shoot me or hit me or but how would you answer his question?
As far as being involved?
How can people in the room help?
I don't know that I can add anything more than they already said, besides, starting at the top, bigger scale, helping to make bigger scale changes, talking to your legislators and your representatives, and because that's ultimately what's going to change this whole cycle is, having big changes being made. But if you do want to be involved, on a more personal level with people, getting to know them, there's always opportunities to volunteer. That's how I got sucked into the post-prison education program as a math tutor, actually, many years ago, and have stayed involved ever since then. But there's always ways to help out and be involved. Everyone has, they're good at writing, or they can help edit papers, or there might be, because the office is only in downtown Seattle, and we might not be able to get to a student who is going to class down in Olympia. But if the more people in the community that we have to reach out and say, hey, this person just got out and they're just want to know the area, maybe you could show them around. So just being willing to be open and talk to people coming out of prison, talking to people in the prisons, because it is very, very scary coming out of prison, and you already feel like an outcast and like society has rejected you. So just being kind of I feel like most of the time while I worked at the program, I was just a cheerleader, encouraging people, letting them know that, yeah, this store might have closed, but another one will open, and there are people out in the community that aren't going to reject you. So just being really encouraging and being willing to put yourself out there and help people who haven't been helped out very much.
Thanks, Don.
And I would just add that you can talk about this in your offices, you can talk about this up the food chain, you can talk about this to city council. They've got some money they could spend. Appropriations from anywhere are perfectly welcome, but talk about it up the food chain and get people to get involved. Internships, jobs, anything that can plug into this program.
It's really expensive. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Are you part of the Seattle Shares program that we have at the City of Seattle?
No,
Why not?
I don't know.
We should talk about that.
Yeah, good, please. I want to say one thing. Sometimes it takes very little to help somebody, and sometimes, and it can be just like Dawn talked about, it's just being there, supportive, somebody to talk to, cheerleader, saying like Jenny did to Gina when she was still locked up, you can do this, you can have a different life. But sometimes it's incredibly expensive. The Seattle Times went down and interviewed Shelley Clear and did an article. I think if you just Google Ari Kohn, Shelley Clear or something like that, you'll get the Seattle Times article by Jonathan Martin. And Shelley told him that we spent $17,000, which is true. And so for the 2 years she was in Bates Technical College and being a mom and reuniting with her kids, we paid her rent. And because she had multiple kids, it was like $650, $700 a month for her apartment. For 2 years we paid that rent, and we bought her groceries because the welding program was all day long. Sometimes she'd be in that welding room till 11 o'clock at night. And so she couldn't take a part-time job. $17,000, what's a life worth? And like Will said, it's like her and her 4 kids, and so it's never just one. So it can be very expensive, or it can be almost nothing at all. I think to my right is sitting $10,000, and to my left is $10,000, to my further left is $10 million, to my so anyway, I know Alice is wanting to throw us out of here.
I just want to give I guess I'm hopefully speaking for the staff here and for everyone who's going to watch the video and just the whole world. Just thank you so much for doing what you guys are doing and the success that you've had, and the fact that you're turning that success back into helping the program. Just everything you're doing. I am so thrilled to hear the stories, and I'm going to pass it on, and I'm going to just keep this conversation going my whole life, because to me what you guys are doing is something that I've always wanted to see somebody do, because I've never felt like I was powerful enough to do. But just the fact that you created this program and that it's working, and all it needs is funding. To me, you'd think that'd be the easiest thing, just to throw funding at something that's working. So to me, I'm praying, putting it in my prayers. I'm going to put it in my conversations, and even getting involved with Seattle Shares, which allows all employees of City of Seattle to donate on a regular basis. That's why it's important that we hook you up with that. And just everything. I'm sorry I went over time, but I just love you guys, and I am so grateful that you came and that you shared your stories. And just everyone, please give a big round of applause.